What is up, Bucs fans? We are back here on Real Bucs Talk. It's a special Tuesday edition of the live stream, and I'm very excited to have my good friend on, Ken Barrett. Ken, how are you doing? How are you feeling about this Buccaneers offseason? I think it's been kind of how we predicted it to go, and it's been pretty good. Some people feel we should have done more, but I think we've done the right moves so far.
I think it was a very Jason Light worthy offseason. Very little splash. Brought back homegrown talent. Made the one real, key good business move with Hassan Reddick, and then everything else just kind of filling out the roster, so that way we don't have to be BPA, or that we can be BPA in the draft.
Right.
You can't really. I really don't see a move where I'm like, that's a bad move. Which again, that's all you can really ask for in an off season where you're trying to compete. I think we've seen teams get better in the NFC. We've seen teams maintain. We've seen some, good teams get worse. Could have been a 49ers level off season, which thankfully we didn't have. The Vikings, everything looks great. I think the Vikings, for instance, have the best off season maybe on paper, but you have JJ McCarthy at quarterback, still flirting with Aaron Rodgers. So the Bucs, I think, are still in the driver's seat for a top, 3 to 4 seed in the NFC, and that's all you can really ask for. Get to the dance, win that division, and go from there. And I think when it comes to the division, no other team has really done that much to improve to take us off the top of the mountain, and that's just where I'm happy right now. That's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, getting back key veterans like Chris Godwin, Levante David, I think you have to be happy with that. Stabilizing your offensive line with Ben Bredesen returning, I think what we're seeing is a good theme of loyalty to this franchise, and I think that's important. You're building that culture. You've talked about that before numerous times, how it's important to have that foundation to build from, and it just helps you bring in not only other players from other teams because they want that, and you can kind of see like that's a trend with Baker Mayfield and even Hassan Reddick. Like they have that kind of um, mutual thing there with needing a fresh start, right? Needing something, a place to go where they know culture is good, the environment is good. This team has been winning. They have been in position to, advance in the playoffs. So adding guys like that, I think that is something that you just continue to build from. And at the end of the day, these guys could get rewarded by this franchise or potentially another franchise if Hassan Reddick does very well. So yeah, I like how they're going there for sure. I mean, I know you're excited about Chris Godwin being back. I know that's
It's my
a
boy.
fan. That's your boy, fan favorite. So yeah, talk about that. Talk about Chris Godwin coming back and what can that mean for this team.
And I think if you just go on Twitter, Facebook, again, not calling anyone a casual fan here, but I think someone who, just doesn't really look at the film, just, hey, I want to feel that, that upper, you know what I mean? I want to feel that good feeling. And, last year people were saying Jalen McMillan's the reason why Chris Godwin wasn't going to, resign with us. And obviously Chris Godwin gets hurt. J Mac has an up and down rookie season, ends it on the highest of highs. I think it was, what was it, 6 straight games with like 50 yards and a touchdown, like a
Right.
rookie record, or tied with like Randy Moss or something crazy. Like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, okay, so you can have that momentum and that's great. But when you listen to coaches, we've had now 3 offensive coordinators come through the Bucs in the past 3 years. All 3 of them have said when they've implemented their offense that
Yeah.
Chris Godwin was the key. He was the guy teaching everyone. He's the guy, again, take away those 2 major injuries. He is the steady Eddie. Obviously, Mike gets the 1,000 yards, but Chris Godwin is the steady Eddie for each game. He's the chain mover. He's the guy in these offenses that, again, Mike's going to get those double teams.
Mhm.
He's the guy running across the middle. He's the guy laying those key blocks on runs. Even when we were struggling running, Chris Godwin was never, you know, taking anything lightly, always physical, always gave 100%. Like Chris Godwin is the guy that that's you just always want on your team, and that's before you even talk about the talent. I think Chris Godwin is a number one in I'd probably say like 75% of the
Mhm.
NFL teams, and not even just because everyone thinks of fantasy football targets. I mean a key focal point of like, hey, I'm going to star this guy because he's
Yeah.
key. Um, Again, you can stop Mike Evans. You can throw a safety over. You can't do that with the way Godwin's style is. Now he has the flexibility to play inside and out, so J-Mac can do more. You still have Trey Palmer. I think it just completes the wide receiver room. You now have at least a 2-year guaranteed contract, maybe 3. So you have Mike, and Mike's deal is up here soon, but he's probably going to be Levante David year to year until he retires, probably a Buck. And
Right.
Godwin's really going to be that number one of the future, gives J-Mac the ability to develop. I just can't, again, in the price point that we got it, we're having receivers now going for 40 million. And
Yeah.
you have Chris Godwin and Jamar Chase is an amazing wide receiver.
Right. Yeah.
You can't
Stud.
look me in the eye and say that you'd rather have one, I almost said T Higgins, Jamar Chase, or 2 of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I'm going to take the 2 because the
Right.
way the modern NFL is, you just need more weapons to get open. Mike is the best one-on-one receiver for size and especially age in the NFL. Chris Godwin is probably the best guy over the middle in the NFL right now. Get them each for about 40 million combined. I'm happy.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you look at bring up the depth chart here, I mean, just having continuity on your offense, you have your starters here, starting trio of receivers. I think that's a really good mix with obviously Mike Evans, Chris Godwin coming back, Jalen McMillan hopefully taking that step, and then the biggest thing, this offensive line growing and staying together. You as a former offensive lineman who's played this game, you know how important that is. And I know you were a tackle, so just kind of explain how important it is to know having that same guy next to you inside and how important that is as far as the relationship goes.
And I think it's different from like college to the NFL. I mean, we're seeing at the elite programs you have freshmen or sophomores playing, but generally
Yeah.
starters only get to play a year or 2 together. So
Right.
in the NFL, you have that ability to really again, Wirf's under contract long term. Bredesen, I think we signed him a little longer than I think any of us expected. Barton's
Mhm.
still under rookie contract for another 4 years. Mock's still on a rookie contract for another 2 or 3 years. And then
Yep.
you have Gadecki as the one free agent left. And I think we can all probably assume Gadecki will be back. So you could
Right.
potentially look at the same offensive line for the next, let's say, 2 seasons, but 3 consecutive seasons. That's very rare in the NFL. What comes with that is communication. What comes with that is, again, the small aspects. And
Mhm.
obviously injury dependent here. I think we'll talk about depth on the offensive line sometime during the show. But again, Graham Barton is a rookie. We talk about, wanting rookies to develop, having good systems around them. Well, now he has Mock is obviously still young, but he's a veteran now.
Yeah.
Bredesen's been around, seen everything. Wirf's obviously figured everything out. Gadecki's on his ascent right now. So like he has the core 5 that he can just again learn from. There's again being able to have quarterback continuity, offensive line continuity, offensive coordinator continuity. That's not something that the Bucs are used to. I think given the new offensive coordinator, his age, really don't think head coach is on his radar in the next year, maybe 2. So again,
Mhm.
that continuity is going to be good for Graham Barton. Ben Bredesen has a home. I think Mock, Gadecki, and Wirfs are going to be here for the long term, and Barton is a rising star in my opinion. I mean, maybe not Jason Kelsey, but he has that type of wow sometimes to his game. He had
Mhm.
an up and down rookie year, but he has that wow, and we're going to see this line I think gel a lot more. Baker, I think I saw a stat on Twitter as the PFF or someone posted that there was only like 2 quarterbacks that went 4 or more games without one QB hit.
Right.
Baker Mayfield was one of them. So again,
Yeah.
you're bringing back those 5 pieces. They can only get better, bearing injury, obviously.
Right. Yeah, and also, the Buccaneers they lost some depth. They lost Robert Hainsey on the offense line. And I think that was expected. He was going to be a starter somewhere. I don't think he was bad enough not to be a starter. I think he was good. It's just the Buccaneers, when you have a guy like Grant Barton, you have to take that opportunity to upgrade, and that's what they
BPA.
did. Yeah, exactly. And that's what they did for the roster. So he goes to Jacksonville. He follows Liam Cohen. I can't blame them there.
Good
They
move for
also,
both sides.
yeah,
Both sides. Good
yeah,
move.
exactly. Again, it's a good opportunity for him. And then when you look at the swing tackle, Justin School, signing with the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, exactly.
School
Co-
skull.
yeah, exactly. Justin School now. So we bring in Charlie Heck. Any thoughts on him as far as what he could be? Again, another experienced player that could have some upside, maybe grows and develops under this coaching staff. I mean, what's your opinion of him?
When I look at Charlie Heck, I think of BAMP, if anyone knows what that means. Big blank mother blank. This guy is just ginormous. That can
Yeah,
be good and it can be bad. I'm not going to sit here and say like I've watched 15 games of Charlie Heck's very limited time in the NFL. I think the biggest thing to look out for, whether it be in training camp or preseason, is just going to be like things like pad level footwork. We know we have two really good offensive line coaches that have both stayed here and can really develop young talent. So Heck is still a little bit on the younger side. So being able to have that giant, I know I've been pretty vocal. I know you've kind of agreed with
yeah,
me with wanting a backup swing tackle that we finally developed with School. But
right.
we had to obviously ride some of the bad waves with him. So hopefully they can get kind of the same thing out of Heck. Hopefully, it's like a backup quarterback. You don't want Wirfs or Gadecki to go down. But right now, Heck is your guy for better or for
Mm,
worse. So we'll see. But I think the backup center, we know Bowles especially wants to have a very capable backup center. So I'm curious to see if they go the draft route, if they just do a vet minimum free agency fine just for someone who is a veteran who could step in if needed. But thankfully, as long as, again, if we lose only one of these positions outside of maybe like Wirfs, I feel
mm,
like we'd be okay.
right,
And that's a good thing in the NFL. No real NFL team other than maybe the Eagles has good offensive line depth.
right.
And again, they got hit. They got Mekhi Becton for cheap, and he just got signed elsewhere. So
Mm,
like this is just a moving piece of the NFL. So again, you can maybe not love as a fan the Ben Bredesen agreement, the free agency signing that he agreed to with the Bucs. But again, what you bought was that continuity, and you can't really be upset at that, especially at the offensive line position.
yeah, I think it was a good market value deal. When you look at it, I mean, the contract overall, I thought was fine. It was good because the market was just going crazy. I mean, we saw offensive tackles and others get paid ridiculous amounts of money. So I think it's important to understand that in a vacuum of what you got, it was really good as far as Ben Bredesen's contract, and it's also a contract where I feel you can get out of if the play just drops off tremendously. You can find a replacement down the road, but overall, I like where the offense is at. I think I want to get to this part here. Christopher Cole talks about Trey Palmer, not that one. Trey Palmer. He's he needs to step up. I agree with that statement. Definitely is going to be challenged. I think this could be a good bounce back opportunity for him just because of what Josh Grizzard is going to bring to the offense. So there's a chance for him to have more plays downfield that really fits his strengths.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Well, Evans is going to get garner the double teams. Godwin's going to get his attention over the middle. Now, J Mac, if you go 3-4 wide receivers, is going to get his attention or, the next best attention there. So when it's like kind of like the Scotty Miller effect in 2020, when Palmer's on the field, he has to have that impact, whether it be that, that deep pass that Baker hits him, which I think the one thing he still needs to improve in Tampa is his deep passing to someone other than Evans. Like I think that's just
Mm,
a general overall thing there. But I think Palmer hasn't lived up to his at least billing from an expectation standpoint. So yeah, it is a big offseason for him. But he has the speed. So at the worst case, you do have that speed demon out there.
Mhm.
And we'll see kind of where he develops. We like our wide receivers coaches here in Tampa, so we'll see. Again, I think if he doesn't break out, it's like your Logan Hall thing. It's like if he's not going to break out by year 3, year 4, like is
Yeah.
he actually? That's kind of where I feel like Trey Palmer is at right now. But it's also really hard in the NFL to have 5 really good receivers. And
Mhm.
one name we haven't even mentioned really, yes, Sterling Shepard. Shepard, other than some penalties last year, I think had a really good, probably a couple drops too, but had a really good season considering that he was mulling retirement. So he's going to have some competition there with Palmer. So we'll see. We'll see where Keem Jarrett develops. But yeah, it is a big off season for Trey Palmer. So we'll see. We know we're going to keep 5 or 6 receivers. So
Mhm.
spots are up for grabs for him.
Yeah, I think that will be, definitely a position, that will be interesting to see if they draft another one this year or not. I guess it really depends on what kind of fits. I'm not really strong on the receiver class this year. I think it's kind of weak overall.
Agree.
You just don't have usually the top guys that you have every year. It just seems like it's just not that case.
Hmm.
I think there's some good value potentially, but it just depends on what is your flavor, and that's kind of what the draft is this year. It's going to be really preference and who do you like the most. But going back to, let me bring back the defense up here. Defense that obviously has been a big talking point throughout last season, going into this offseason. I think a lot of fans want to see us continue to add quality there and add more depth. But just talk about, let's start it off. Obviously, the first move made of free agency, and that was literally the first move, Hassan Reddick coming to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I love the fit. I think it could be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of potential for it to go really well.
100% agreed. I mean, I remember, so Twitter was obviously down, or X, whatever, was down
Yeah,
when that broke. So I actually saw it on Instagram. Was the first time I've ever seen a breaking NFL story from Shefty. But Hassan Reddick is the absolute scheme fit. What have we wanted in Tampa? Someone to finish. Yaya Diaby does great job, gets pressure. Joe Tryon-Sharenka kind of up and down, but got
mm,
pressure, couldn't really bring a guy down. Reddick, we all probably did not like what we saw last year. But I think we've seen a trend of players who sit out, not really have a good season,
yeah,
which is what he did. He's still 30, so he's still some years left. So if he has a really good year, Bucks can either sign him for like a $20+ million extension in the offseason. I don't think anyone would bat an eye. But
right,
let's say he does great, whether if he stays with us or goes elsewhere, that's a third, fourth round comp pick type of consideration there. Or if let's say he stinks, $12 million is nothing
yeah,
for the edge position, and what the impact he provides um, is fantastic. I mean, I think they're going to add another body there in the draft.
Mhm.
Um, I think between the depth there, we'll see. I think Chris Braswell is going to be the most important piece there. We know what Yaya Diaby is.
Yeah,
We know that he does have a ceiling, but the ceiling hasn't really just been sacks. So Hassan Reddick, we know he 10 might be, an average season for a guy like Hassan Reddick. So
right,
again, does he have that 15, 16, 17 sack season? That is going to be what's going to, determine a lot. Was Buck's biggest problem is third down defense. So those
yeah,
extra sacks, what Todd Bowles calls not just ball hawks from a catching the ball perspective, but the turnovers. You watch Hassan Reddick tape; it's pretty similar to that Shaq Barrett. If he's getting a sack, that ball is in trouble for the quarterback.
right,
So
yeah,
that's what
yeah, I
Hassan
agree.
Reddick brings. And for the price tag, we all were speculating, hoping that it was going to be like Trey Hendrickson, Max Crosby. Those would have been great, right? But they would have cost that draft pick compensation. And now we've heard that Vegas re-signed Crosby, and Trey Hendrickson's probably about to re-sign with the Bengals. So those weren't even options to even begin with. I think Jason Light got the best value. You could argue, what was the other Eagles pass rusher who just signed pretty big?
Josh Sweat.
Josh Sweat, great player,
Yeah.
but he's obviously going to come at more of a premium given his age. So I think Hassan Reddick, rightfully so, was going to be a really good addition. The price point is just fantastic. Even if he got hurt week one, I really don't hate the investment by Jason Light.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think it was a good move. It was a value move. I think just based on what you talked about, who was available versus what was out there in trade. And we know Jason Light doesn't want to give up, draft picks. So I
Premium
think it
picks
was,
too.
yeah, premium picks for sure. And we saw, Myles Garrett was really never on the table because the Browns just didn't want to give him up, and they paid him instead. So I think, that's important to look at. And then out of the free agents, really, you're not going to overpay for a Harold Landry. You're not going to overpay for Josh Sweat or any of these other guys.
Let the
And
bad teams overpay.
right,
Get the
right,
value. Get the value when it's there, and that's Light's MO, whether it be in the draft or especially in free agency. He hasn't made a splash since really Lovey was the head coach here, or I guess no, Dirk Cutter, if you want to count Chris Swaggy Baker. But that's really the last time I feel like Jason Light's really swung for the fences. Now he's just hitting doubles after double, triples, and the occasional home runs, which hopefully Hassan Reddick's a home run. We know JPP was a home run. We know Shaq Barrett was a home run. We'll see if Shaq Barrett comes back. I think that would be an interesting push for Chris Braswell. Again, not that Shaq Barrett's going to be elite or anything anymore, but I think we now know he'll come cheap. We know he's got the veteran presence. And we'll see kind of how the draft folds out. I think we'll probably get to that at some point. I know everyone loves that Boston college kid. I'm not even going to butcher his last name. We know that I will. But like again, what was the other one from Marshall who has a character concern? So
right.
you're
Mike
drafting
Green.
that. Yeah, you're drafting in the teens, 20s. Like you're not gonna get an elite edge rusher. That's just how the draft is. So again, we'll see what kind of they do. And I think the biggest piece for at least the front seven is going to be who's a middle linebacker next to Levante David, and does Chris Braswell develop? I trust everyone else there except maybe your boy
Right.
Logan Hall, but I think he's going to be pushed by some veterans there.
Right. No, I agree. I think so yeah, when looking at the other defensive moves, obviously bringing in Anthony Walker Jr., bringing in Kendall Vildor, I think, those moves are things that just upgrade your depth, upgrade over KJ Britt, upgrade over Josh Hayes, Tyreek Thunderberg. So those are important. And then lastly, I know this is a topic that you've talked about a lot. The punting, like bringing in Riley
Riley Dixon, baby.
yeah, to bring in that guy to
An average
upgrade
to
your
above average punter, but we know. Have you ever seen the Puntalytics or whatever? I'm sure you've probably seen
yes,
it on Twitter. We
yeah,
had two of the three worst punters of the entire season. I don't know what.
yeah,
I mean, we'll see what happens to our boy Camarda. He's probably going to be a Pro Bowler in Buffalo, but just wasn't good last year. So again, we'll see what Dixon can bring. Hopefully, he's not a product of being in Denver, but I think our boy Josh Capo dispelled some of the analytics when it comes to him punting in Denver versus elsewhere. So I would
right.
love some stability. Chase McLaughlin's still stable, thankfully.
Yeah. Chase money, man.
Chase money,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, Chase money. But yeah, Riley Dixon, I think again another underrated move. You're finding a starter out there, so I think that's important.
And we don't have to
And
draft one. Imagine not having to draft a kicker or punter in the first, day three, but early day three picks or day two
right,
picks. Like that's awesome.
yeah,
Not have to worry
absolutely.
about that.
Yeah, and then lastly, and we'll dive in. I can get more of your thoughts on the other guys, but most importantly, I thought this was a huge move today, bringing this guy back, Bryce Hall, to add to your corner room. We thought of this guy as potential corner number 3 last year, potentially pushing Jamel Dean for number 2 role, to be a starter. So, just your overall thoughts of those guys coming in, and obviously bringing Bryce Hall back as well.
I think Bryce Hall is an awesome addition. Again, given the price point, he would have had a real opportunity last year had he not gotten hurt in week one. With the corner room, we know that Dean's probably due for a couple games of being hurt. So having a veteran there, again, whether it be cornerback or safety, I think you're going to see we've already signed one now with Bryce Hall. We signed another one with Vildor, like you mentioned. I
Right.
think you're going to at least see a drafted safety. And I know for a fact you're going to see a day two corner. No more Whitehead. So, again, the more safety depth, reliable names is going to be super welcoming. And also, don't read into our lads. If you guys were following along with Price, they got Tyke at nickel and Izzy in at safety. It's going to be flipped there. So I honestly, I'm good with however they play Izzy and Smith, unless they do a true upgrade at safety. I really like having those two players just on the field in general. Izzy
Mm.
does the right things, and I think Smith is just on in a sense. If Brian Branch didn't exist and Tyke Smith played for a more well-known franchise, he'd be really highly regarded in the casual fan community.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, just those moves in general, I thought they were well done. I mean, when you have Bryce Hall and now you still have Kendall Vildor, who has starting experience, has played before, you're not asking him to come in and be a starter right away. It's just in case of an injury. But right now he can upgrade at special teams. He can just do more than what Tavier Thomas was able to provide. I believe, especially if he has to be on the field. Like
Hmm.
he can just provide more from that aspect. He has inside outside versatility at corner, which is important. And then, like you said, with Christian Isian and the safety spot, I agree. I like Tyke Smith going to strong safety, and you can still play him at nickel, like that's no problem. And you still feel good about where you are at that spot, and that's somewhere where I think they could add a veteran safety after the draft. If
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, if you don't get the right guy that falls to you, at safety, then don't force it.
It's the
And that's
defense's running back is what the safety position is in
mm,
the modern NFL. Is you can find
right.
Jordan Whitehead on the street for $3 million. Like Jordan Whitehead's obviously no longer with us, but you can find another guy for a couple mil, solves that problem. Again, if you don't let Tyke play some safety in training camp, if he's more comfortable in the nickel, then like you said, go get a safety, and then have Izzy and him compete, or again, Izzy can learn a little bit more safety, be the backup nickel. Like I think again that contribute to good strong depth, which is why I agree. Light's probably going to get a $2 million safety at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more there. Anthony Walker Jr., again, huge upgrade over KJ Britt. I think we all expected KJ to move on and to get a
The flip
guy.
flop is funny.
Yeah, I mean they changed spots. One goes south, one's coming north. So yeah, it worked out, and that's another move that I like. Again, he has starting experience, can come in, doesn't have to be the starter. Probably won't be the starter, but he can have a role as far as maybe coming in for pass coverage or something along those
Or
lines. Which
Savassi Dennis gets hurt. I think right now it's his spot to lose.
right,
I'm really not convinced the Bucs are going to take a linebacker at 19. I know there's a lot of Jihad Campbell talk, but again, I think edge safety. I know there's one really good safety from Georgia that's probably going to be there because again, safety isn't a premium pick to really take in the teens. So for me, it's kind of like, hey, if
mm,
the number one safety's there, I think you're going to take him over the maybe one or two linebacker, just because again, um, Jihad Campbell I feel like fits more of the Levante David role than he does the true Mike role.
mm,
That's at least my point. Not saying that Jihad Campbell can't do it, but I feel, and the more I read, though, I've watched him a little bit. I think 4-3 outside linebacker would have been a great place for him to play.
mm,
Um, Obviously, Levante David plays that more traditional, will linebacker in a 3-4. So like it's, hey, why would you, unless you really think he's the guy to replace Levante David, like that's fine. But I really think Servassier is going to be the primary starter, and I think it's going to be a day two like round 3, round 4 linebacker is kind of what I see.
Mm,
And we'll see what even someone like Deion Jones can do in a backup role if needed, and those types of things. I think they're going to realize that that middle linebacker might not be the biggest piece. It's going to be great for early rundowns, but I really want to see Bulls just unleash safety play. Give me 4-1-6, big nickel, big dime, like on obvious passing situations.
mhm.
Starks, that's his name, Malachi Starks. Like again, if they
Yeah,
took him at 19, I think that's a more useful pick to the Bulls scheme than Campbell.
right. Yeah, because I mean, it would be an obvious upgrade move because then it puts Izzy in more as a depth piece, which I think he fits at best, where he can just come in and kind of do like specialty roles where you don't really need him to be, that main starter on the field. So yeah, I think that would definitely help. It could also help you move Antoine Winfield more into the box, and I think that's where he likes to shine.
Just
Like he's just a
versatility, like you said too. You can rotate them both. We know Antoine's a really good slot corner too. So again, if you
right.
have Tyke, him, Starks, which Winfield hopefully is going to be healthy this year. I think that's one narrative that I think a lot of Bucks fans just, again, we all know how great he is and can be, but that season coming off of his contract, we know he wants to bounce back, and he played through some what it sounds like some pretty serious stuff. So I think a healthy, potentially healthy Antoine Winfield Jr. only helps this defense significantly.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We got a super chat here. Appreciate it. Meets McGee. That's a cool name. So he's not feeling the Jahad Campbell selection. Film of Alabama versus LSU left a sour taste. Like most drafts, the best MLBs usually drafted in the middle rounds. Yeah, I mean, I think Jahad Campbell actually had a really good game against LSU. Watching that
Against
one, but
Alabama. Oh no, wait, no, you're right, LSU. You're right. You're right.
yeah,
I'm thinking
yeah.
Devin White. I'm sorry.
No,
Don't
it's
listen to
okay.
me.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I like his point. I think linebacker usually the stud linebackers are found outside of day one. You find them in day two. We have one ourselves in Levante David. He was round 2 pick. You look at the Bobby
So was
Wagners.
Wagner too, right?
Yeah, Bobby Wagner was a day 2 pick. So there's a lot of them. I mean, Fred Warner. You look at Dre Greenlaw. All these guys that have been later picks that pan out, that work. There's been some hits in the first round. I mean, Jack Campbell, probably the most recent one that's been pretty solid for Detroit. But
I
I
think that's
think
what we need more. I think we need more Jack Campbell at that position, and I think we need Jahad Campbell.
mm, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, would you feel the same way about Jalen Walker? I mean, he's kind of fits that mold of if you want to just send him forward like Devin White was, like he could be that guy.
Yeah,
But
but my
I
at
feel like
19 or whatever, no, no. Like I
yeah,
didn't love Devin White at 5, even though he's
right.
basically exactly what you want in terms of a Madden control player that you want. Like he has
Mm,
all the speed, he had all the hit power. White had everything that you wanted, and I just feel like you're chasing
yeah.
that elite play at that position, and it's just not like you said. It's just not there statistically in the first round, and it's not because players are bad players. They just might be overdrafted. And I feel like it's very like when I look at mock drafts, and plus I know you probably dive into a lot more mocks than I do. I just
Mm,
feel like everyone who put what receiver for the Bucks was, oh, Chris Godwin isn't coming back, and then
yeah.
they put, oh, linebacker for because Levante David wasn't coming back. And
Yeah.
now that both of them are back, it becomes Starks. It becomes okay. You're gonna get the linebacker next to him. Oh, or that really tall Texas or the Texas receiver, whatever that apparently ran like a 4.4 or whatever. That's
Yeah,
the guy. He's gonna fall to the Bucks. So like we're just gonna draft
right.
it. To me, it's just like the lazy narrative, which we've heard or we've seen with Light, especially in drafts in this most recent free agency, the past like 3 years post Brady, really free agency. It's really about the value picks at positions of potential need. Light's looking not just for a starter, but he's looking at the next 2 or 3 free agencies and the next 2 or 3 drafts. and saying, hey, there's abundances at these positions. So I'm going to take the first round guy that I know I don't have to sign a free agent for, and I don't have to reach in next year's draft. And I think Bowles is probably really clamoring for a safety, an edge player to probably develop behind Reddick, and really any type of corner to get a year of experience to replace Dean. I think those are going to be the three biggest priorities. I don't think it's going to be corner round one just because that's not Light's MO. Um, so I think really safety and edge are the two things that I really see. I think it's Malachi Starks as a safety, and then it's just, hey, what edge falls that doesn't have the character concern?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Donovan Ezeiruaku, I think is a logical choice at 19. I think there's a good possibility that he is available. And that would be a smart pick. He's a guy that can come into a comfortable situation where he can grow and develop and be comfortable where he wouldn't have to be counted on, in a high pressure role, being a first round pick. So you can kind of learn and develop under the guys, that are in front of you, and fit in well. But I've also seen some other scenarios where let's say Ezeiruaku is not available. Let's say maybe Starks goes earlier than projected, and then you have no Jihad Campbell either, no Jalen Walker. I mean, where's the point where you feel comfortable if they could? I guess it depends on what the offer is, but if they could trade back and move some spots down, get some extra picks. And do you look at, maybe one of these other corners, maybe like a, Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, maybe Siobhan Ravel out of East Carolina? Um, what other positions do you think the Bucs could look at? Do we even look at, offensive players? Is there any offensive players that you think could be in consideration? I know Gray Zabel would be a Jason Light guy, but do you take him first round knowing that he's probably not going to play, or do you feel comfortable, if Ben Bredesen's a backup, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you trade down, I think it's the perfect place to meet that cornerback need.
Right.
So I would probably go cornerback one, safety two, and I wouldn't say necessarily ignore edge, but
Mm.
again, you probably have Shaq Barrett if he wants to come back to kind of just throw a veteran in the room. You have Anthony Nelson as a backup who, when playing significant snaps, Anthony Nelson does okay,
Mm.
except for when he's dropped into coverage. So like I feel like edge is like the luxury pick in the first round. But I really think if a team is taking a safety that early, given the amount of, I think there's going to be probably three quarterbacks taken before the Bucs. I think there's a lot of wide receiver talent, at least in the first round, that's probably going to go early.
Okay.
Um, at edge, there's a lot of edges that are probably going to come off the board. So I feel like, again, if it's the absolute worst case scenario, I think Light would stick it, the pick and get that cornerback. But I think, like I think there's a tier of players. And
Yeah.
I think if Light moved back 5 spots, again, we're talking about all of these positions that the Bucs want, and the worst possible thing happens is all the value goes away. But what
Mm.
does that usually mean? There's value for someone else that just fell.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think Light's going to drop down 10 picks and get a second and a fourth. And I
Right.
feel like Light would move back probably about 2 or 3 picks. Probably look at different scenarios, leading up to the draft. But I can't see Light probably dropping more than 4 or 5 spots. And I think he would take, again, there's probably 3 corners that he probably has a late 1, 2 on. And I think that's what he would take.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think at 19 they're going to get a good player. I think they're going to be in position where there's possibilities of maybe a Will Johnson, falls to them at 19, which I think, obviously that'd be easy run in to the podium.
A 6'2" corner with that
Yeah,
type of speed, like
right. Playmaking ability, has 9 interceptions on his college career. Um, just a good player overall. So most likely he probably goes earlier than most people expect. I know in some mocks that I've seen, he's been falling for whatever reason. Again, I think that's the thing that fans struggle with is like these mocks, they're designed to be different every time, or at least they try to be different. They try to put out new scenarios, they try to put out new things to think about. But at the end of the day, like if these players are the elite talents, like they're going to go pretty early. And I think at 19, though, the Bucs should have someone good. Whether it's Ezeiruaku, whether it's even Jahad Campbell, or it could be a corner that they really like. Safety Malachi Starks. Malachi Starks to me, I mean, he's a clone of like he has Brian Branch kind of play, but he also reminds me more of almost in a sense of like Antoine Winfield,
But
bigger Antoine,
taller. Yeah,
taller,
taller.
yeah, taller Winfield, because Starks to me is more of a true free safety. Like he really plays free safety well. I don't think he's as physical as Jade Barron.
Yeah.
Jade Barron, I think he could play everywhere. He could be like that Swiss Army knife that you want. He's probably more similar to Brian Branch in that physical aspect that he brings to the game. Kind of that, box defender that can do a lot of things. Malachi's just a playmaker back there in the back end, where you put him in there, you can move Winfield maybe to slot, or have him move around more, have Tyke rotate.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ezeiruaku and Starks, I think, are the top fits as far as people, as far as like what Jason like.
What we know, yeah.
Yeah,
What we know.
yeah,
There's might things we don't know, but of what we do know, again, Mike Green's probably off the board.
right. Yeah, agreed. Another super chat here by Meets McGee. Bucks has had better luck with cornerbacks rounds 2 through 4. I mean, yeah, I
Everyone
mean,
hit besides MJ Stewart, pretty much.
yeah, I mean, Rondé Barber was in that second to third, fourth round. So I think he was a third round pick. Brian Kelly,
Yeah, same deal.
So all those guys have been round 2, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, all panned out in the, second,
SMB.
third round. Yeah,
SMB, at
exactly.
least for the Bucks. I mean, you couldn't.
Hmm.
I would love for him to not get beat on corner routes the way that he did, but if we're gonna give Devin White props for the Super Bowl run, well, I think SMB deserves his flowers too.
Oh yeah, yeah. SMB was, I mean, probably one of the best players in the playoffs. Like the
And
plays
until he
that he,
started dating that TikTok interviewer or whatever her name is, then it just went.
yeah,
Pew!
yeah, downhill from there, for
But yeah,
sure.
no. To get back on the topic of the first round pick, or at
Yeah.
least really premium picks, we know. I mean, they're not going to pick a starting offensive lineman, so that's gone. Running
Mm.
back, obviously, we wanted to pay Samaje Perine $20 million. That just obviously didn't work out. I'm just kidding. So running back's probably off the table, unless an absolute steal of a wide receiver comes out. I think wide receiver is off the board, and other than, I don't even see how Warren makes it to us. But I highly doubt that, our offensive coordinator really wants to go to Warren and try to make this like new weird offense to kind of utilize him. So I think all offensive players are off the board. Again, you
Yeah.
could see a wide receiver pick, you could see a tight end pick, but what I really hate is the lazy narrative. And I'm going to pick on my PFF guys, because I know we talk about this offline, where I look sometimes for the PFF, well, I forgot what they're newly now called, but their
Mm.
podcast, and that literally just they kind of give a whole realm of the all 30 teams. But with the Bucks, they say, oh, it would be great for the Bucks to have like a really athletic tight end. Did they not watch what Devin Culp did?
Right.
Did they not watch what Kate Otten did when we were down Evans and Godwin? Payne Durham he's had some really good moments the past 2 years. Again, not saying they wouldn't pick a tight end. I just don't think it's going to be with a premium pick. I don't think any offensive lineman now is going to have a premium pick. Quarterback's not going to be a premium pick. I think Baker's going to probably get an extension here, if not this year, next year. So Baker's probably the quarterback for at least the next 4 years, is probably my thoughts. Um, So I don't see a premium pick going on the offensive side. And if you told me and a really good, even defensive line player to maybe usurp Logan Hall and really provide more interior pressure along with Cansey, if you told me there was a guy like a Kalijah Cansey clone in this draft,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Bulls and Light really thought, hey, we can help our room by providing more pressure with a guy like that. Like again, I could see that. I really think edge would be awesome, but like you said, edge is going to go early. Edge is the premium position. So like I don't see a world where Starks isn't there personally. If that year's Derwin James slides
Yeah.
when we got Vita Vea, I
Right.
don't see a world where Starks goes at that point.
Mm.
Derwin James, other than the ACL stuff, was one of the most elite prospects at the safety position we have seen inside out. When he was healthy with the Chargers early on, you saw the bang that came with his play. So I think Starks or Ezeiruaku, I think, are going to be there. It's just again what Light and Bowles kind of want. I just don't think it's going to be corner round one because, like you said, it's kind of like our
Mm-hmm.
MO. We do
Yeah.
really well in round two, unless it's a trade down.
Yeah. I mean, I think for corner, unless Will Johnson is there at 19, I don't think they pull the trigger on some of these other names that could be available. Jahdae Barron, again, I don't know if they want him at outside corner. He's probably more of that versatile piece.
Yeah.
Um, and Malachi Starks probably fits that a little bit better. But I'm confident that they'll have a good, player there. I think Ezeiruaku is probably the leader in the clubhouse, if it was my guess.
Yeah.
Followed by, probably Jahad Campbell, just because.
I think Campbell's going to be. I think
Yeah.
one of Ezeiruaku, Starks, or Campbell will be there just
Mm,
because of the position needs. Because again, corner's going to go off early. We see the
yeah.
cornerback market is kind of approaching the edge market right now.
Right.
The highest defensive players are now cornerbacks, except for Myles Garrett, pretty much. So, like, again, it's just going to be very interesting how it goes. But we have tackles to still come off the board. We know how important of a position that is in the NFL. We have quarterbacks coming off the board. We have receivers, running backs, even potentially. There's probably two going in the
Mm,
first round, maybe one after where the Bucs pick. But
yeah.
we know Gentry's going. Gentry is going to get taken by someone in the top 10. It's going
Yeah.
to happen. So again, I think there's going to be enough push to whatever the Bucs want. Maybe those are their three players, and like you said, one of those three is probably going to be the pick. It's probably who's left. If there's two left,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So just as we go into the final segment here, just looking at what we discussed so far, obviously the Buccaneers offseason, I think, has gone to plan, or at least how we want it to go. Getting the offensive continuity back in place, hiring a up and coming offensive coordinator that can grow with your team, and Josh Grizzard. You have the offensive staff coming back. Defensively, I think the underrated moves is on the coaching staff, adding just lost his name, Larry Foote to the outside linebacker position now. I think that's a huge benefit. Moving George Edwards to passing game coordinator on defense, and then Mike Caldwell coming back for the linebackers in the middle.
That's a good hire in my opinion. I like the call.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really good, especially for guys like Servassier Dennis, that can, they're counting on a lot of him, and rightfully so. Like, he played really well, last season when he was in there, so they're expecting him to jump up and get better. So, talking about that, the move of Hassan Reddick, and then just adding depth to your defense with Anthony Walker Jr., Kendall Vildor, and recently bringing back Bryce Hall. I think you have to be excited about what the Buccaneers are doing. And as we shift to our final segment and how it pivots to the NFL draft, we kind of, dissected the first round. But as we go into the later rounds, I mean, what kind of, I guess, players or value are we looking for? I think we can all agree that secondary will probably be a day two pick alongside potentially linebacker as well. Is there any other spots that we should be considering? Probably defensive line. I know that has been mentioned. So let's just talk about that a little bit and kind of, give a little insight into that.
Where's the value? Where can you get the next Anthony Walker that you don't have to pay next offseason on a day 3 contract? Where can you get the next Will Golston?
Mm,
That's kind of where I'm at, is like, again, if you want to throw another corner in there, I really think probably a day 3 safety is going to occur, whether it's round 4 or 5. I know we don't have a 6, correct? Um,
right.
it's a 6 that we don't have. So I think a 4th or 5th is going to be a safety. So you're going to get some special teams out of that. Um, Again, that's where I think the value is going to, maybe even a big boy. So like Greg Gaines, for instance, like if you can find a
Mm,
round 5 big boy to kind of, take Greg Gaines $3 million off the books next year, that to me is kind of what I would expect this team to target. I don't think they're going to find a backup center. I think we saw enough good things out of Elijah Klein, but he probably will get another $1 million guard competition there. So I really don't know if they go interior offensive line, but they could, maybe a receiver. But again, I think it's going to be those potential, backup slots is what you would hope
mm,
to save those $2-3 million, so that way next year you can allocate that money. That's kind of what I see, because when I look at Logan Hall right now, Will Golston isn't on the roster, so there's a backup opportunity there. We know linebacker, there's really some opportunity in safety, so that's kind of what I picture for as the draft moves on. I think the premium positions, edge, corner, and for right now, probably inside linebacker are going to be the premium picks.
mm. Yeah, I think when you look at it, what what is your type of like draft strategy when you look at like the early premium rounds? Are you looking more for guys that can come in right away and contribute and like be like those high level floor guys, or are you looking more for like ceiling and potential? Or I guess it depends on who. Does it really just matter on what's available, or how do you kind of go about that with your strategy?
I think position's important, and also where you draft. So I think 19 is awesome because it's not as late as 30, and also
Yeah.
I feel like you don't have to reach for a player at 10. For me, I think 19 is being like drafting like eighth in
Hmm.
a fantasy football league out of 12. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
it's like you're gonna have that Jamar Chase that falls to you. You're gonna have that Cooper Cup from a couple years ago fall to you. Um, so to me, if I'm like the Bucks at 19, I'm taking the same approach that I took with Graham Barton. Right now, I look at linebacker, I look at corner, I look at safety, and I say, hey, who could I replace Robert Hainsey with at those 3 positions? And if it's edge, it's who can replace Hassan Reddick after a year. Like
Hmm.
those are the things that go through my mind with the 19th pick. As you move lower, when I say lower, I mean 1 to 10. I think you need to take more of a risk. Maybe not the Devin White position risk,
Okay.
but if it's a receiver, maybe that elite trait is something that you covet,
Mm,
because whether it be receiver, quarterback, edge rusher, those contracts are just so important that, again, if you get the Myles Garrett, um, yes, they're paying him $40 million now, but you didn't, you know, miss, and you hit on the upside. You saved on the first 5 years before you really had to invest. So, like for me, the closer you get to 1, I think you go to more premium position. The closer you get to 30, you get just the best player available that you can, and you kind of just like figure it out. At least in the first round, I know everyone loves the where need means talent there. I think, again, the closer you get to 1 and 30 is where you're going to get to the extremes
hmm.
of what those two are. So I think 19, see what falls to you. If something falls to you, take it and run.
Right.
If it's if every, like you said, the worst possible scenario comes, Campbell's off, Starks is off, Ezeiruaku's off, there's no good edges left.
Yeah.
Maybe you look at, hey, maybe a defensive like line player fell.
Right.
Hey,
Right.
maybe an elite receiver fell. Um, maybe you had the second linebacker behind Campbell is who you really liked anyway, so you take him or you
Mm.
trade back. And I think the closer we get to trading back, I think is going to be a corner.
Okay. Yeah. No, I like that, and I want to get to the super chat, and then I'll give my thoughts on that draft strategy that I asked to you. So meets McGee again with another super chat here. Frontline set. Do you think they need to develop players to replace potential losses with David, Logan Hall, Jamel Dean, and Mike Evans? Yeah, I think that's what we touched on here, and that kind of goes into my strategy when I'm looking at the draft. I'm looking, obviously in the first round, I'm looking for that best player you can get, whether it's a guy that just already has a great floor with potential to grow into something more, or he's just rock solid. This is what you're going to get. Kind of like Graham Barton was last year. Like, what you're getting with Graham. Like, this is what he can be. You see the upside, you see the athleticism. And then as you move along in the draft, you get into day 2, day 3. I'm willing to take more risk. I'm willing to bet on traits. I'm willing to bet on the upside, especially on day 3. Like, when you're in day 3, you just want to take super athletic guys that could potentially be coached up and come into play and do some dominant things maybe down the road. Perfect example is Zion McCollum, like 5th round pick, had a RAS score of 10. Like, dude, super
And his buddy
athletic.
Reek Woolen too. How about in the same draft, maybe the two most athletic corners to come out in the past 20 years don't
Right.
go in premium picks. And Zion maybe doesn't have the Pro Bowl on his belt. I think Woolen has one. But to your point, you took the risk on the athleticism, and it paid off for both teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and to Meets McGee's question there, I think you could they're definitely going to find replacements for Jamel Dean. They're going to find a replacement for Logan Hall. Like, I think corner and defensive line is definitely a position they're going to target in this draft because the strengths of those positions are definitely there. I think value for corner is really good on day 2, and then defensive line. I think you can get a starter in round 4. So I think you're set there. As far as Levante David and Mike Evans, that remains to be seen. We'll just have to see. It depends on who becomes available. Receiver is just such a tough spot this year. I don't like the some of the value that you're going to get. It just really depends if a right guy falls. I love Jaden Higgins, but again, even him is kind of iffy for me. So yeah, I would kind of wait on that.
Yeah, it's I think there's two ways to really approach the draft is you can be like the Raven, and when I say approach, I mean from an elite standpoint. The Ravens just take the best player available pretty much every single year. They get the A's, the A pluses, and they usually hit on most of those players. And it's great, but sometimes there's the long-term plan that's kind of missed there. The more I hear Light talk, the more I just kind of, put myself in his shoes. I think he looks at both what you're saying with Meets McGee, I think is what his name was. Who's could potentially be a free agent? What does next year's draft look like? And that kind of weighs into those decisions because, hey, he might think linebacker is something that we can fix next year. We
Yeah.
can. We look at free agents next year. We look at the draft next year. Let's just say in the hypothetical linebacker we can secure next year, then we can get by with Dennis or whoever, and we'll address that next year. That might be something Jason like sees, or he might look at the next 2 years and be like, "Wow, the linebackers are absolutely terrible. Jahad Campbell, if he's there, he's an auto take. If he's not, then we have Starks or Ezeiruaku or whatever." So like, there's two ways really about it, and I really think you see the most elite GMs, I think, other than maybe the Ravens, have that balance of looking 2 years out,
Yeah.
looking at the roster. It's not just, hey, I need to fill in a gap here. Let's just get a starter here. It's not usually as simple as that. They have to weigh the short and the long term, and
Hmm.
I think we have a really good one.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to get to the super chat. This is why I was kind of smiling, almost bursting out of laughter. But JC sends $1.99 super chat plus smells like poop.
That's
Uh,
$1 more than I expected, JC.
yeah. I
I'm just
appreciate you, JC. He was trying to get in on tonight's action. I was like, nope, not tonight. We'll
I
get you
talk
on.
too much. I'm sorry, JC. You can hit up plus next week because I'm
No,
sure.
JC talks too much. That's that's the issue.
Wait, you found someone who talks more than me?
Yeah,
Wow. I'm just kidding.
JC knows how to talk more than you.
No, we love you, JC.
But yeah, no, we'll definitely have JC on at another time for sure. Hopefully maybe he can join us for, our draft coverage. I know, we're gonna have live streams here for the draft, so maybe we can get him on here and, talk Buccaneers
At least
football.
pop in. We know JC is at least there's a lot of really good Bucks writers and
Yeah.
personalities out there. JC, pound for pound, is one of the hardest workers that I've seen. If you knew JC and see all of the strides he's made in the past 5 years, um, again, he's a hard worker. He's got all of the contacts now. He's in our group chat, sometimes giving us some nuggets when he knows something. So again, JC, we appreciate everything you do, man.
Yeah, JC is a good guy, man. Besides him liking the Boston Red Sox, but other than that, he's a good
He
dude.
likes Brady at least. He's
Yeah,
one of
he
the few
does.
people that didn't annoy me about hating Brady, and which yesterday was the anniversary. So happy 4 years or 5 years to all who celebrate the Tom Brady signing.
Yeah, that was a special day yesterday. The anniversary of Tom Brady, the anniversary and birth of Real Bucks Talk here on YouTube. We officially started that same day. Tom Brady signed. We're like, we're gonna start YouTube now, and we did. Went live later that evening, so that was a lot of fun. But with that said, yeah, I'm not putting this. Yeah, get out of here with that Boston and New England stuff. Uh, be sure to hit that like button. That's what you guys can do. We appreciate everyone in here. We have over 167 people, so I expect 167 likes. So hit that like button, and I hope you guys enjoyed this show. We're gonna try to have Ken back on here at some point. We'll definitely have him on for
I'll be on
the
the draft. You know me.
yeah,
I'll be
yeah,
available.
yeah. We'll have Ken on for the live draft show. So that will be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. And as we move forward, we'll probably get a better idea of who the Buccaneers are, looking at as far as prospects and get a better foundation as far as how this draft is going to shake out. But I feel like this is going to be one of the fun drafts where we could see a lot of surprises.
Maybe not last year. I still can't
Yeah,
believe 6 quarterbacks win in the top 12.
top 12 picks. Yeah,
But again, I think there's going to be, like you said, what we haven't seen is that one trade yet.
yeah.
Even the early first round pick trades. That tells me something's going to happen draft day.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I could see a lot of trades. I could see trades where, um, you know, people are moving back just because the top of the draft is not very strong.
Hmm.
There's not, there's a lot of good players. There's just not a lot of those elite blue chip guys. So definitely it could be where trades happen at some point, but we'll have to see how it falls and go from there. But right now the Buccaneers are in a really good spot, really good front office and management. They're building the right way, so I think you have to be happy about that. So Ken, with that said, I'll turn it over to you. Just let everyone know how they can find you and all the good work that you put out there on social media.
Twitter or X at Bucks_Barrett, and I'll close it out with my hot draft take because I don't think I'll be on here before the draft. But I see a Shedeur Sanders, Johnny Manziel level slide.
Yeah,
He's going to slide into the teens, and I think someone's going to trade up for him. That's my thoughts.
I could definitely see that. I could see Pittsburgh Steelers trading up and maybe snagging him.
Kenny
So
Picketing him or something. You know what I mean? That's
right.
what I say.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Well, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time, Ken. Always a pleasure. Always good talking Buccaneers football. Always learn something new about the offensive line because that's what Like you're my go-to guy when it comes to the offensive line tape and stuff like that. But everyone else, hope you guys enjoyed it. JC Allen, we'll definitely get you on here at some point. And we'll try to get Mark back on here too as well. I know the people miss him. He was in the chat, so much appreciated. But with that said, everyone, be sure to hit that like button and keep supporting the channel. And until next time, we'll see you next week, guys. Go Bucs.
And comment who you think the Bucs are going to draft, everyone. Peace.